hopefully everybody's joined us. Like I said, this is the first of a four-part series on beginner beekeeping. Today we're going to talk just about why we want to become a beekeeper, and we'll go into the other sessions will be things like the basics of honeybees. Well, we'll cover a little bit about the biology, the cast of characters there. Another session on what we need to get started when we want to truly, start keeping bees. And then once we get our bees, the fourth session will be, once we get our bees, what we need to do with those bees to get our hive going. So let me introduce myself. My name is Frank Licata. I'm the operations manager for Man Lake, the Pennsylvania office. I've been keeping bees almost 20 years now. I'm an Eastern Apiculture Society master beekeeper, and I started out as a hobby beekeeper. I started out with 2 colonies almost 20 years ago, and today I've grown into a sideliner business running 140 colonies. I really like the hobby. So what I want to do is go through a few reasons why you might want to become a beekeeper. Hopefully one of these will fit you and it'll ring true with you, and they're all good. So first is, generally with most people, they want to do it as a hobby. Why do we want to, why pick this hobby or look at beekeeping? Many of us are approaching, say, retirement age, and we've got a lot of free time on our hands, so we want to take up a new hobby. Some people are just looking, they have extra time, they're not maybe busy with their family life too much, or they're not working all the time, and they want to find something as a relaxing hobby. Beekeeping is perfect for that. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take an extensive amount of expertise. It takes knowledge, but it's not something you have to do every single day. You can do it on the weekends. You can do it in the evening when you get home. It's just a nice, fun hobby where you could keep it as small as you like or grow it as big as you want to. The other part of it that I think is great is that it can become a family project. A lot of the brand new beekeepers coming into beekeeping, it's generally maybe the husband and the wife, or the parents and the children, or brothers, sisters, cousins. I've had all kinds come in. It's a great family project. We spend too much time sitting on the couch, playing video games, watching TV. We're losing that connection with nature. And I think, to get the whole family involved in this is a great opportunity to bring you closer, and it's an educational thing for young children. The children seem to get more excited about it than the adults do. And when you get your family together, there's a lot of really good things that come out of that. So I encourage any family to, if you're looking for something, if your kids are into nature, take up beekeeping. It's not terribly expensive, and it gives you a reason to get out of the house and get out into nature. Another aspect of it is the constant learning. There's a lot of us out there that, as we go through life, we always want to learn something new. Beekeeping is something where once you start, you're not an expert in 6 months, you're not an expert in a year, you're not an expert in 5 years. It's a constant learning thing, and it's that gaining that knowledge of nature and how things work. It's just amazing watching these insects go out and take nectar from a tree and bring it back and turn it into something beautiful like honey. You can get involved in beekeeping, and it leads you to other areas of nature, of projects, of hobbies. It's taken me in a lot of different directions since I started, and I think it's just a great thing to keep my mind active, to keep me physically active, and I think everybody should look into it for that aspect as well. Now, one of the reasons I get a lot of hobby beekeepers coming into beekeeping is for pollination. You might be a gardener, whether it be a vegetable gardener, a flower gardener. Maybe you have a small orchard. Maybe you raise blackberries, raspberries. All of that needs pollination. In the last 20 years or so, everybody knows that our pollinators have been on the decline, whether it be our native bees that do pollination or honeybees. And if you garden, you notice that sometimes your vegetables might be a little misshapen, your apples, your peaches, those might not be quite formed correctly. That's all due to pollination. If you have apple trees or peach trees, cherry trees, and you're not getting fruit, there's a reason why. I personally have a small orchard, and all of my fruit has been phenomenal over the last 20 years. It wasn't prior to that because of the lack of pollinators. So if you're a gardener, it's just an addition to help you become a better gardener or a better orchard keeper, anything like that. So pollination is a big one. It helps everything. Even the wildflowers need pollination. So you're doing something not only for your own garden, you're doing something for nature. So I would say, if pollination is one of the things you're interested in, it's a good reason. If you keep gardens, anything like that. One of the probably best aspects of beekeeping is the beekeeping community. When you start keeping bees, you're going to meet other beekeepers. You're going to maybe join a club, a local beekeeping club, a state beekeeping club. And what I've seen out of that is I've made so many new friends, met so many new people, and you find that we're all the same. You can take a man that's, in his 70s, and he's sitting there having a friend conversation with a young woman who's just in her early 20s, and they find common ground. It's a way to build these friendships that last a lifetime. I met friends when I started 20 years ago who are still my friends today. Maybe I only see them a couple times a year at some of the conferences, but we formed that bond over beekeeping. And there's a lot of ways to do it. Like I said, there's associations, there's clubs, there's beekeeping blogs, and there's even chats now on beekeeping. And the important part about those things that I always tell people is join them, become part of that. Not only will you make those friendships, but you gain knowledge. Beekeeping is something that requires constantly learning, constantly getting new knowledge, constantly getting help or information from other beekeepers. Although we all do things a little bit differently, in the end, it's pretty much the same. And the more you get involved in the beekeeping community, the more successful you'll be, and the more friends you'll make, the more connections. You never know when someone that you know through beekeeping is going to be able to help you in something else, whether it be beekeeping or not. It's a great way to make a lot of friends, to get out there, to travel, see other parts of the country, and you'll find out that if you're looking at beekeeping as a hobby now, you'll think it's just, a couple of hives here and there. You'll find out what beekeeping really is, from the hobby beekeeper all the way up to the commercial beekeepers that are keeping thousands of colonies. It's actually an amazing thing. And you'll realize where our food sources come from. We just think it magically appears out there. Beekeepers are a huge part of our food production in the United States and around the world. And you'll find that out as you go to some of these clubs and you hear speakers talk about it. So that's one of the things I enjoy most about beekeeping is going to these clubs, meeting people, talking to people, sharing ideas. Another good reason is just to connect with nature. I said it before when I was talking about the family project aspect of it. We tend to stay in the house. We don't get outside. We don't do enough. We don't do walking. We don't do physical work outside as much as we should. Beekeeping is something that gets us out there within the environment. We're seeing, once you start beekeeping, you'll start to notice when different flowers bloom. Since I got into beekeeping, I can tell you when the black locust blooms in my area. I can tell you when the goldenrod blooms and the fall aster. I never knew that, but since I started beekeeping and watching my bees go to the different flowers, gather the nectar, I've learned a lot about the environment. I've learned what's not good for my bees, that, the pesticides. You get a pesticide kill on your honeybees, had I not kept bees, I wouldn't have paid attention to what people were putting on their plants and spraying around the area. It's just a way that we get back to nature and connect with that environment, which I think is, pretty important. Self-sustaining. As we get into this world, especially with COVID now, COVID was one of the things that made us realize how tenuous our lives are as far as being tied to the local grocery stores. How many things are out of stock this year? When you become self-sustaining in your life, beekeeping can be a part of that. Beekeeping, you can make honey and use that honey for all your sweetener needs in your house. You can use it for cooking, baking, tea, or just eating your honey right out of the jar. So that's one of the things that I think people nowadays are really looking into. I've seen it not only with beekeeping, but other animal husbandry type of hobbies that people are very concerned now what they're putting in their bodies. We all know that some of the honey that you can buy in some of the chain stores has been adulterated. It's not pure honey. It has no health benefits because it's been pasteurized. It's been filtered to remove the pollen. We know that if we make this honey, we know exactly where it came from. We know the nectar sources. We know the pollen sources. We know it's good for us. It's the only sugar that you can say is not bad for you. So self-sustaining, we all want to be that. We all want to get to that goal. Will you keep enough bees to be 100%? Maybe not, but you'll get partway there. The last thing I want to talk about, and this was probably one that you wouldn't do day one, but you can maybe get there. You can actually start a side business on beekeeping. Now, it's not something that you'll start today and be profitable tomorrow, but you can start slow, learn the business. Beekeeping, not only do you have honey from the hive, there are a lot of products that come from the beehive. We can talk about pollen. We can talk about beeswax. We can talk about honey itself, the different kinds of honey, all kinds of products, and you can use those. Propolis, that's got antifungal, antimicrobial properties. We can make a tincture out of it and use that. I started a business years ago, and I had 2 colonies at the time. Right now I'm at 140 colonies. I make about 6,000 pounds of honey a year, and I have a very serious side business. Honey lotion, honey and beeswax soap, beeswax lip balm, beeswax candles. Anybody can do that. It's not very hard. It just takes a little bit of work. And if you're someone that's looking to make a little extra money on the side and be your own boss, very, very easy to do with honeybees. It takes work. You can't sit back and do nothing, and think the bees are going to do it all for you, but you go in partnership with the bees and you can have a very, very successful business. And that's something I've set a lot of people up in through the court over the last 20 years, and they're all doing very well with it, and I think anybody can. It's not a difficult thing. And maybe the last thing about why we want to become a beekeeper is for the thrill of it all, right? Is there anything more thrilling than holding a frame with 1,000 stinging insects 2 feet from your face? I always say that I can tell someone who's going to be successful in beekeeping because the first time I hand them that frame of bees, I don't see fear in their eyes. I see a thrill and an excitement. And it really is. You'll know when you do it. If you're afraid, maybe it'll take you a while to get used to it. But most people, I would say 90% of the people that do it, that get into it, they take that frame and they're just enthralled with it. And they're looking and they're thinking it's great, and they get into it and they take it from there. There's nothing like a hobby that's thrilling. You'll be the talk of your friends. Hey, so-and-so's a beekeeper, because everybody wants to be a beekeeper, but a lot of people are afraid of bees. There's nothing to be afraid of with honeybees. They're a very docile insect. They are not aggressive. There are times they can be a bit defensive, but they're not aggressive. And it's just thrilling to realize that you can be this close to them, thousands of honeybees, and they have no interest in stinging you. They're just going about their work. So, those are some of the reasons why we become beekeepers. Are there downsides to it? There can be. Yeah, we take the occasional sting. It's not a big deal. Does it hurt? Yeah, it always hurts when you get stung, but it's the first time it might hurt you for 20 minutes. By about, halfway through the season, you won't even know after a minute or two where the bee stung you. Your body gets used to it. There are the possible allergies to bee stings. Very uncommon to honeybee stings. I think it's 1 out of 100 people is allergic to honeybees. A honeybee allergy, just so you know, is not when you get stung in the hand and your hand swells up. That's not a honeybee allergy. A honeybee allergy is when you get stung in the hand and you break out with hives or you have trouble breathing. That's a serious one. Everybody swells when they get stung. Everybody hurts when they get stung in the hand, but we're fine. I encourage everybody, if you're serious about this, read some books, start to learn more, look into clubs. You can join a bee club with having no honeybees of your own, and I suggest you do that. Start looking now for a club. Tell them you want to get into bees. You will meet somebody who might be willing to be your mentor. I've mentored a lot of people in beekeeping, and it's an important aspect of it. And you go to clubs, you'll find these people that you don't know, you're meeting for the first time, will reach out to you. They're very friendly and say, sure, come over to my apiary, I'll show you what I've got. So maybe at the end of this session, you should start thinking about what you want to do. I suggest reading some books. I've got a few books that I think are very good to get started. This one's called The Good Living Guide to Beekeeping. That's a good book to read. These will all give you a introduction to beekeeping, to the terms and some of the things we do in beekeeping. This was called Beekeeping, a Handbook on Honeybees and the Beehive. And probably my favorite one for beginner beekeepers. It's called The Backyard Beekeeper. It tells you in simple and general terms the things you need to do to be a successful beekeeper. I like all of these books. They're not a substitute for classes. They are not a substitute for joining clubs, but it's something that you can read. I read mine when I first got this book. I read it over and over and over. Every night I read it. And it just gets you used to the terminology, the parts of the hive, the bees themselves. So any of these will do. And that's all about I have to say. If you've got any questions, I think there's somewhere there you can type in a question. If not, we will certainly talk more in our second session. We're going to talk about the bees themselves. I'm sure, if you're thinking about becoming a beekeeper, there's 3 types of bees in the hive: the queen, the drone, and the worker. But what do they do? How does that hive function? We're going to cover all of that. And then that's where you start really saying, wow, this is so cool. I can't wait to get into this hobby. I encourage everybody to do it. I did it, started 20 years ago, and I would have to say it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It's taken me places I never thought I'd go. It's introduced me to people that I never thought I'd meet. And I have absolutely no regrets. I don't think I've ever met anybody that regretted keeping honeybees. So with that, if there's any questions, please ask.